Hello, 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 Mr. DZ here. Today we're in our last of the basic series. We're talking about whether or not something's restrictive. And that really comes down to, is it necessary? Is it necessary? And there's a specific case that I mean, and I'll explain it here in a moment. So, um, if something's necessary to understand a sentence, we call that restrictive. And there's different ways that this can show up. It can show up in different forms as a noun phrase, a part an adjective phrase. There's a lot of different ways that it can show up. Usually, if it's necessary, we do not put a comma. Usually, if it's necessary, we do not put a comma. And if it's not necessary, we call that non-restrictive. And if it is not necessary, we do put a comma. So a little maybe counterintuitive there. Because remember, grammar is just a bunch of signals trying to help you understand what you read. And so if you see a comma, it's doing a few different jobs. It could be doing a few different jobs. And then knowing which job that is will help you understand the meaning of the sentence. Let's give it an example. So what the heck am I talking about? Look at these two sentences. My brother Tim loves pizza. My brother Tim loves pizza. Exact same sentence. The only difference is we have two commas here. The top one is restrictive. It means you need the name Tim to understand what I'm talking about. And the second one is non-restrictive. You do not need the name Tim to know what I'm talking about. Do you know what I mean? What I mean is, in the first sentence, I have more than one brother. And you need the name Tim to understand which brother I mean. In the second sentence, I only have one brother. And so you don't need the name Tim to know which brother I'm talking about. That's what it means to be necessary. Do you need it to know which one you're talking about? Which one of whatever? So the top one, the pilot Amelia Earhart disappeared. So Amelia Earhart is what we call an appositive. It's a noun phrase that gives further information about a previously mentioned noun, or a noun that had come just right before it, like pilot. So this Amelia Earhart, we need that to know which pilot. Imagine if we deleted Amelia Earhart. Well, we wouldn't know which pilot. If the pilot disappeared, okay, which pilot? I don't know. So we need the name to know which pilot we're talking about. Second sentence has the same meaning, but we've rearranged it a little bit. So the pilot is the appositive. It's still an appositive. It's giving us more information about a previously mentioned noun. But this time the pilot is not necessary to know which Amelia Earhart we're talking about. You see that? The pilot, the words the pilot are not necessary for us to know which Amelia Earhart we're talking about. Now, if there was 5 Amelia Earharts at a party and one of them had disappeared, we would need the pilot to know which Amelia Earhart we're talking about. But the chances of that happening are relatively slim. So a little top tip here. It's a rule of thumb. I wouldn't call it 100% true. And that's just because I find it rare that I call anything in English grammar 100% true. So we use that if the information is restrictive. Now, it doesn't always apply. Like the examples we just used, those are appositives. You don't use that and you don't use which. You don't use anything. So we use, but if we have a phrase that comes after it, a clause that comes after it, then we'll use that if the information is restrictive. So I gave him the neighborhood dog that ate my homework. Many neighborhood dogs. We need that information that ate my homework to know which dog we're talking about. Which dog we're talking about. We need the information that ate my homework to know which dog we're talking about. So it's restrictive, no comma. And we use that. Second one, you use which if the information is non-restrictive. I gave him the neighborhood dog which ate my homework. In this case, there's only one neighborhood dog. And so we don't need which ate my homework to know which dog I'm talking about. So we use a comma. Boom. Boom. So that's restrictive, non-restrictive. It'll come into play. You're just going to kind of be asking yourself these questions. You know, is it dependent, independent? Is it a phrase? Is it a clause? Is it restrictive? Is it not? And you'll kind of go through this mental checklist in your mind as you're figuring out these SAT questions. And then knowing these things is going to help you do that. So that's the basics. These concepts will come back again and again as we talk about digital SAT reading tips, tactics, and techniques. And if you haven't yet, subscribe and hit the bell icon. Ciao.